Okay, here's another video on time slot interchange switching. In particular, we're looking at TST switches. So this video follows directly from the previous one where I ended on this slide. And what I would like to do now is just summarize the relationship between our TST three-stage network and the three-stage Clos network. And in the three-stage Clos network, you'll recall that we had three spatial stages, and that we could hook them together. They were all space stages, and that the number, each stage can be characterized by the number of switches in it and by the size of the switch. And so the number of switches and the size of the switch. And in the three-stage Clos network, we had a size of little n by k at stage 1, little k by n at stage 3, just the opposite, symmetric, and big N divided by little n by big N divided by little n at the center. The number of switches was big N by k, big N by little n, and the number of switches in the center stage was k, and the number of switches on the output stage was big N by little n again. Okay, and so this is how we characterized the three-stage Clos network. Okay, and now I want to show you the relationship to the TST switch. So in a TST switch, it's like a three-stage Clos network where, for number 1, n, the number of time slots on each TDM, n is equal to the number of time slots on each input line. That is little n, which is the number of inputs of each of the stage 1 switches. So if this stage 1 switch has 3 inputs, that corresponds to 3 different time slots on my incoming line. Okay. Number 2, big N divided by little n, which is the number of switches in stage 1, is equal to the number of TDM input lines. So here's a TDM input line, and we have a stage 1 switch for each of the TDM input lines. Okay. And finally, due to the timing constraint, we're going to let the interior of the switch fabric remain in sync with the timing of the time slots on all of the inputs and outputs. We're going to set k equal to n. Okay, so this is hopefully all you need to show the mapping between what we already know as a three-stage Clos network with these values and the TST switch. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll relate this to give you a hint on solving problem number 3 from the homework. So here's homework 3. Consider a TST switch where the space switch is 2 by 2 and each of the 2 inputs and 2 outputs of the space switch has a time slot interchange switch with 3 time slots. So now we know that 3 time slots is the number of time slots in all of our input and output lines. Okay, so we call that number the number of time slots is little n. So we know now that little n is 3. It also says that the space switch is 2 by 2. And so at the center of at the central stage, they're 2 by 2. And so 2 is equal to big N divided by little n. Little n, we just figured out, was 3, so big N has to be 6. Okay? In other words, it really is something like having, it has, I guess, and so the number of switches at stage 1 is also 2. Okay, so apparently there are 2 input lines with 3 time slots in them, in this switch. Again, the fact that the central stages were 2 by 2, the space stage was a 2 by 2 switch, tells us that big N divided by little n is 2. The fact that we have 3 time slots is little n, therefore big N is 6. And so I hope that's a good hint to get you started on problem 3. To get started on problem 8, 8 is also a TST switch problem. It says we have 12 T1 carriers at the input and 12 T1 carriers at the output. Now each T1 has 24 voice channels, TDM multiplexed together. So now we know the number of inputs, and we know the number of time slots, and I think you can figure out everything from there. Okay, it's not so easy to draw because there are a lot of channels, a lot of time slots here, a lot of inputs and a lot of time slots. But you should be able to figure out this problem from this. And for part C, you have to know that the voice channels, the time slots on a T1. Well, you can look up the duration of a time slot on a T1 to get the answer to part C. So I hope that helps with your homework on the TST switch problems 3 and 8. Thanks.